This year has brought with it some of the biggest games of all of this generation. However, seemingly whenever Bethesda brings out a new open world experience, be it a new Elder Scrolls or a new Fallout, that instantly becomes the most anticipated game release of that year. Now, this year might have been a little bit different regardless because we had Red Dead Redemption 2, but at the very least, Fallout 76 should have comfortably held that number 2 spot when we talk about the most anticipated games of 2018. In theory, before the year even began, if I told you Red Dead Redemption 2 was releasing this year, which we had already known, and that there would be a new Fallout game with multiplayer as well, to the naked eye, that's probably just 1A and 1B with those two games. Go back and look at the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, that was without a doubt the most anticipated game of 2011. And Fallout 4 was one of the best promoted and marketed games I've ever seen. That was released back in 2015, however, they did something very clever with it, where they didn't really talk about the game much, everyone knew it was in development, but then it was just announced at E3 2015, and then they released it soon thereafter. Revisionist history might have had you think otherwise if you weren't fond of the game, but man, going back to E3 of 2015, Fallout 4 was the game that everyone was talking about and easily the game that captivated gamers the most. Bethesda did something pretty similar with Fallout 76. This was another game that not a lot of gamers knew about, and it was announced right before E3 of this year. We had a full gameplay reveal at E3, and now of course it's set to release soon thereafter. However, unlike Fallout 4, which is that new iteration, Fallout 76 to many seems more of like a bridge the gap kind of a game. It doesn't seem really like a Fallout 5, rather an extension to Fallout 4. But given the fact that it's adding a completely new layer of gameplay with the multiplayer, you would think the anticipation would be far greater than it is. Even if you go back to say the release of Fallout New Vegas, that was more of a bridge the gap kind of release. That was a game that was done by Obsidian, not even the same team, and that game had a higher level of anticipation than Fallout 76. So why is it that the anticipation for this game really isn't there? That's what I'm going to try to analyze in this video and assess why the hype is lackluster for what should be one of the top 2 most anticipated games of the entire year. Now, I'm gonna say this right away, unlike a game like Shadow of the Tomb Raider where I thought the game's hype was absolutely dead and it turned out to be 100% accurate, that game, while received pretty well from a critical standpoint, it is not doing very well from a commercial standpoint based on all of the information we have so far. I do believe Fallout 76 will still resonate commercially, but maybe not to the extent that it could have. With that being said, let's move on. Now, I think the first thing we have to talk about when assessing Fallout 76 is Fallout 4, and while Fallout 4 was a game with an incredible amount of anticipation leading into its release, the hype was enormous. However, the seeming consensus was disappointment across the majority of gamers. Not that it was a bad game, but when you're coming off the release of one of the most iconic games ever in Skyrim, and given the quality of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the standard was set so high, Fallout 4 came across a bit bland, a bit mundane, and while you could make the argument, hey, Fallout 76 is a new game, you can't judge it based on a previous release. Just like any other franchise, we have recency bias. Look at how a game like Assassin's Creed Unity was so detrimental to the release of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which came out just a year after. The same applies here, but to a lesser extent. Don't get me wrong, the Unity example is really extreme. Unity was a legitimately bad game. Fallout 4 wasn't that, but it wasn't that top tier Bethesda experience we've come to expect from them. And then you move on from that and you actually look at what we've seen out of Fallout 76, and I think the word that best describes it is underwhelming. Does it look inherently bad? Not necessarily, but Bethesda has always had this element, especially for Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, where they show you something that is absolutely breathtaking, and that's just not what we saw out of anything we've seen from Fallout 76. Multiplayer is only gonna take you so far, and it's not like adding multiplayer instantly makes everyone excited from the get-go. Just the announcement of multiplayer is right away gonna be very divisive. A certain portion of gamers are gonna love it, but others are gonna be very skeptical, and I don't think Bethesda has done anything to win over those skeptics. In fact, I think some of the promotional elements have pushed them away even more. I'll get to that in a second, but I just mentioned promotion, and one thing that you'll notice right away from a game's promotion is visuals, and it is actually really shocking to me the amount of vitriol that Fallout 76 has gotten because of its graphics. I've always heard statements like graphics don't matter and you care too much about graphics, but with Fallout 76, it seems like graphics do matter because that has been a big element of pushing people away. I've heard specific statements like this looks like a Fallout 4 copy and paste all the way to this looks like a PS2 game, which I think that latter statement is a little harsh, but I get it's just hyperbole. I can understand the criticism of it to an extent, but we've also heard things like Fallout 76 is going to be 4 times the size of Fallout 4, so it's a little bit of a give and take. Yes, the visuals stay the same, but hey, the world's going to be bigger, but I want to see how that statement is actually translated into the game's overall world, how live it is, etc. Visuals are only part of it, of course, and a game lives and dies by its gameplay elements, and I think there have been a number of revelations that have turned some gamers off. The lack of NPCs is pretty scary for a lot of people. Rather than NPCs, the players interacting with one another kind of serves as that character interaction that you're looking for, and I think that really pushes away a lot of those people that weren't completely sold on the multiplayer spin from the get-go. In my eyes, the idea of no NPCs definitely does no favors for those gamers, and it only adds to the fact that yes, while the game is going multiplayer, the fact that it is multiplayer is directly stripping away an element that was present in previous games. Multiplayer should be a direct enhancement to the overall experience. It shouldn't be taking something away, and whenever you introduce the aspect of something is being taken away from the gamer, I think that's one of the biggest detractors that you can have in a game. Oh, you had this before, but we're not going to give it to you in this next game. Rather have this. And then you also have the introduction of microtransactions, and I know those of you that are super excited for the game and are Bethesda defendants will say, oh, it's cosmetic items, or oh, you can earn the currency by just playing the game, etc, etc. But again, this is the introduction of a new element in the game that wasn't present in previous games, and how is that going to excite anyone that was already skeptical about the game? Oh, going multiplayer has taken away NPCs and it's added microtransactions. That sounds fantastic. Now, to be fair, a lot of games are including microtransactions these days, but I don't think that's a reason for it to be okay, and even if it's just for cosmetic items, it's not like games haven't existed in the past that had cosmetic items as just in-game unlocks. It's just natural that how they implement microtransactions for these cosmetic items directly impact the game and what could have been without microtransactions. There could have been a world where these cosmetic items were just available to you as a part of playing the game and paying your $60, but no, they do want that additional investment from you. And then you have other elements in the game that haven't been received as well, such as things like the perk cards, or for PC players, mods aren't going to be present in the game until 2019 when private servers are implemented. And I can understand why that is. You don't want crazy mods running around in public servers. However, to the naked eye, you're thinking this is another element of the game that's being stripped away from the gamer, at least for the time being when it comes to mods, and all of this is a direct impact from the fact that the game is going multiplayer. So to reiterate, we've got no NPCs, we have the introduction of cosmetic items being viable through microtransactions, and we have no mods on PC until 2019. Seems like we're losing out on quite a bit here. And when you're taking all of these elements away from the gamer, those gamers that were completely sold on multiplayer, even they might be a little bit pushed back, but I'm sure they'll still be interested in the game. But those that weren't completely sold on the multiplayer aspect of Fallout, how does all of this win them over in any way? I just don't see it at all. I think I covered what I needed to cover about Fallout 76. I think there's still a ton of potential here. I'm just trying to assess why there's been this lack of anticipation for a game that on paper, prior to us receiving all of the information and seeing it, it should be an absolute home run. Now, we do have the Break It In early test application kicking off on October 23rd on Xbox One and October 30th on PC and PS4. So I think that is going to be the time when people are really going to get an idea about the game, and that's what pushes people one way or the other. But right now, Fallout 76 really doesn't have that allure that a Bethesda game should have. Definitely has anticipation, definitely has a level of hype, but with a Bethesda open world experience, I would just imagine that gamers should be chomping at the bit just a month away from the official release. That's all I've got. What do you think? Do you think I'm off base? Are you super excited for Fallout 76? Or are you one of those gamers that have been really put off by the game up to this point? Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Gather rare and valuable resources. Yet these rewards don't come without risk. The fate of this new world is yours to command with the power of the atom.